Hello everyone. Today we are going to be taking a look at creating a base grass library that you can use in many renders. A couple months ago I had decided to take all the grass products that I have and compile it together into one Cinema 4D project so that I wouldn't have to constantly go back and forth and creating creating the same base grass that I always had. It was just an idea to essentially cut down on setup time so I can still have the creative process going through my head while I don't have to go through mundane tasks like setting up grass 300 times, or at least the base set of grass settings 300 times. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be going over setting up two different types of grass. These are the two different grass materials or objects that I have. This one is from Quixel and it's free. So if you have a desire to have any kind of grass material or object or whatever, this would be a great one to go with. And then I had purchased this grass pack from this guy, Iwu Pilik. I definitely probably pronounced his name wrong, but I absolutely love the products that he has. And for $5, this is a pretty banging grass library right here. And he has a whole bunch of other ones. I mean, there's dandelions, there's leaves, there's a whole bunch of things that has been created by this guy that are absolutely amazing. So I would absolutely recommend checking his stuff out and possibly purchasing some. I mean, this one's $1 for some flowers. That's pretty good and adds a lot to the variety of landscape. So these are the two products that I will be setting up, and let's go ahead and head over to Cinema 4D and get that started. Okay, so here we are in Cinema 4D. This is a new project, and I'm going to go ahead and start with some basic things. I'm going to create a landscape. 600% is fine. I'm going to turn off the bordering, turn off these guys, and I'm going to move that down. Okay, there we go. So once we have that, I'm also going to set up a Octane Daylight, and this is just going to act as just some basic lighting for the scene. So nothing too fancy is needed. I'm gonna have a little bit of lighting in here so we can see. I'm going to change this to a square 1x1 and then create a live viewer for that side. And now we have one side that is square and this one that allows us to see what is happening. And then just for my own sanity, I always do this. I'm going to type in all of these settings. These are the basic ones that I always default to, especially when setting up things inside of Octane. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is set up the grass textures from Quixel because that's the free one, that's the easy one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. If you look right here, this is what the pack includes. We have textures in here, which is great. That's absolutely perfect. We have different objects with different levels of detail. That's what LOD stands for. So 0 being very close up to the camera, and in this instance 3 being far away. So because these are not live renderings that we're doing, or we're not doing real-time rendering, we're going to just use the LOD 0 for it. So it's pretty simple on getting this inside of Cinema 4D. I'm just going to take this, grab that, plop it in, good to go. And there's our first one, and I'm actually going to speed up the process. What it did is it opened up the FBX file, which I don't want. I'm going to go back in here. I'm actually going to find that library in the content browser. Here we go. And then I'm just going to click and drag in. So there's the first one, here's the second one. now that all of these guys are loaded up, we are going to kind of space them out a little bit. I figure that helps me with figuring out what needs to be done to each individual object. All right. There we go. So that's 4 right there. Okay. Okay, something I need to mention is making sure that your objects, your grass textures are rotated correctly. So if you can see right here, these green, red, and blue lines, we need to make these guys match up with that. And it's really easy to do. It just allows for whenever we eventually scatter this with an Octane scatter, we don't have to go in and mess with the rotation of it. So I'm going to hit L and then R. I just need to rotate that 90 degrees. So if you do that to all of them, you can turn L off. So if you do that to the rest of these guys, it will fix it all. All right, so now if we click on all these guys, the green arrow is pointing up, and that's good. I think what we need to do now is go ahead and clear, or I think what we should do is just take these guys, go to materials, and convert the materials to Octane materials. And once we do that, we can remove the unused ones. That is great. Perfect. So now we have Octane ready materials that we can go into our node editor and fix or make all pretty. So what's very important when dealing with creating base libraries that you're going to copy and paste into multiple different projects is the naming of each of the materials, of all the materials. So for this first one, let me see which one this guy goes to. It's 25. Okay, looks like they're all 25. All right, well, we're just going to use this first guy here, set him up, and then it's honestly just a matter of copying and pasting everything that I do into the other sets of materials. So this one right here, we're going to call this one Quixel to let us know which library this is coming from. Grass, and then I'm probably going to give it a number, or actually I'm going to go to grass gloss 01, because this one we're actually going to make glossy, which is great. So as soon as we have that, it is time to grab our textures, which are right here. So here are all the textures that we're going to need for this guy. Oh, come back. So we have the albedo, which is just the color. We have the AO, which Octane calculates on its own, so we don't need that. We have the bump. Don't need cavity. We have the displacement if we want it. We have glossiness, normal, opacity, roughness, specular, and translucency. So I think what I'm actually going to do is in Octane, what is this, 2019 1.5, they have these awesome universal nodes, which is really cool and useful. And so I'm going to use this. I'm going to turn that metallic off. I'm going to use this just because it has all of the options right here. Essentially, this is going to be our gloss texture, which is what we have listed right here. And then we're going to make a diffuse one, and then we're going to combine them together. So let's go ahead and grab these guys. Let's grab all the ones we need, which is the albedo, the displacement, the gloss, the normal, the opacity, the roughness, the translucency. Actually, I'm going to swap these guys. Yeah. Okay. Now that we're back here, I'm going to go back to universal, turn off the metallic, and get this guy ready to go. Don't forget to save often because that's important. Okay, so I have right here, this is the albedo, which is literally just the diffuse or the color channel. I'm gonna go to this one. This one is the transmission. This one is the specular, which is gonna go right there. This one is the roughness, which is gonna go there. Opacity, which is right here. It's really easy, just drag and drop. Quixel is fantastic for creating just drag and drop projects or textures and materials. Now this is bump or this is bump. And then we have displacement. Now, if you're going to be scattering a very large amount of objects and they're all going to be feeding back into this displacement, I would not recommend using a displacement map. I feel like sometimes with single GPU setups or just low VRAM, it's very tough on your CPU or your GPU, and it really hits render times pretty hard. So because the grass is going to be so small and you're not going to really tell much of a difference with it, I'm going to opt out of not using a displacement texture. If you have a large beast of a machine or you feel like you need to have that kind of detail, absolutely go forward. I am not going to sit here and tell you absolutely cannot do that. But I just found out with doing what I do, I only need to have this kind of level of detail. So the next thing that we need to do is, let's see. We have all of that. I need to rename this. Grasso 1. Okay. Let's see, how are we looking here? It's looking pretty good, actually. So I'm going to apply this guy to all of these guys. Just to be a little organized here. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay. And there. So now we have all of our grass and it's all set up perfectly and ready to go. No, not quite. There are a couple of things that we can do in order to make this guy a little more customizable. And the first thing is going in here and messing with the color of the albedo. So I'm going to go and drag a color correction into here. And I'm going to move that. And I think just get a little closer up on these guys. So we can change the color of our objects. And so what I'm going to do here is just go down the hue until we get to something that we need. Probably drop the saturation. The gamma is a little bit bright. We can just drop that to there. Probably go just a little bit. Don't need to go too far. So we have that, and that grass looks great. And I think that material is pretty good. I think we're ready to roll on that. And then we just need to have a medium. So the medium that I tend to use is a scatter medium. So we'll go into here, medium, scatter medium, grab or throw it into here, and I will grab a, where is the RGB spectrum? We'll copy these guys, throw it into the absorption and the scattering. And what we need to do is more worry about the color. And what I typically do is I go with just a little hint of green. Oh, wait, no, I go full on green. And in here, I'll do kind of a more yellowy punch. And that'll give our grass just a bit of a kick to it. Add a little more volume, a little more substance to it. So that is our material for this guy. And I think that looks pretty good. So the next step I'm going to do is actually separate this guy into different categories. So I'm going to have a small category or a small clump. Which is going to be these two right here. Throw those guys in there. Medium clump. I'm gonna throw these guys in there, and large clump. And that's gonna be these two. All right, now that we have those guys, what we need to do is create our Octane scatter and name it accordingly. So we're gonna have one scatter for small, one scatter for medium, and one scatter for large. Okay, and so now it goes into their respective areas. There's small, there's medium, or there's large, small, and medium. Okay, I'm going to drop in the this pack. I'm going to set this up and separate it out exactly how we have done before. And so there's something I want to share with you. If you have a grass pack that only has a certain limited amount of textures for it, there's a couple of ways that you can use the ones that they have for your advantage to get some more detail. So let's say I want to add some bump into this guy. What you can do is you can take it, you can use a color correction and a gradient, map that into here, and take out the saturation and clamp the texture a bit, and that'll add some bump into all the channels. Okay, now that we have all of that created, it is time to start shaping our landscape. So we're just going to use this as our base landscape. That should be pretty easy. And then what we're going to do is go ahead. I'm actually going to move these guys to be, oh, I messed up, to be off frame so that they don't interrupt our rendering. And now we're going to scatter on the surface, not on the vertex. We're going to scatter on these, surface. And let's go ahead and pick this guy. And pick it. And pick it. Okay. So you can see there's a whole bunch. Let's go ahead and start with just the small guys. So here's the issue with some of these textures. You can see right here, there's a very, very, very tiny little guy. So some of these, oh, well, never mind. Okay, so now we have all of them scattered on to this object. So what we're going to want to do is to go ahead and grab, let's see, randomize the seed. Always do that. You don't ever want to keep it on the same thing. And then we're going to want to change its vertex map. And we can do that by creating a shader. I'm going to use a noise. I'm going to use this noise. And we can use this to drive different patches or create patches and clumps inside of our scattered object. So what I can do is I can take this scale. I can probably get up to 500. You can see just how it affects the location of our objects. So I'm actually going to, let me resend that real quick just to make sure it's updated. Okay. Perfect. So what we're going to do, I can even clip it, or I can clip the highs so that you just see a certain number, or I can clip the lows so you can see a certain number. So it's always, you can always change it around, make it all your own. It's very customizable. And as long as we keep it within these three scatter objects, it works out great. So I'm going to turn this countdown actually to 500, maybe 200, so that we can take a greater look at everything. I'm going to include the medium. The medium is a rather large, so what I need to do, let me check this real quick. Yep. And check this guy. Okay. So let's go ahead and crank that down to 200 as well. Now these guys are a lot bigger, so if we want, we can take the scale down probably to 0.75. That allows it to match better with the scale of the smaller ones, so that's useful. Next, we're going to go ahead and do our noise shader again. You can pick whichever one you want. Let me grab this guy. And I will randomize it, probably increase it. Let's try that. And we can increase the high clip, crunch it in the low, increase the contrast, and boom. And now we have little clumps of these guys everywhere. So if we can combine them together, we can see, we can increase it up to, let's go 500. And 500, you can see we're starting to create little patches here and there of all of them. So let me do the last one to this guy. There's actually a change I'm going to do. I'm going to create a tall one. So there is these specific guys that are very tall that I want to have in their own specific scatter because they poke out above everyone. So it's this guy, it's these three right here, 1, 2, 3, these big stalks. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to create my own scatter for them. I'll call it tall because they're going to be taller than everyone else. And then I can just throw that guy in there and we are good. I'm going to set that to that. And wow, look at these guys. So we're actually going to make sure that they are set to a low number. I'm going to resend this so that it updates correctly. Here, let me do that. Don't forget to save. So sometimes your objects are going to be really, really tiny. And all you need to do is just go into the scale, increase it up to however big you need. I'm probably going to make mine about 85. And that should be okay. And now we can take a look at all these guys, see how it looks. This is indeed a clump. Now we have some pretty darn good looking grass right here. Looks really, really good. And we can go into our medium of some of our materials and adjust the saturation of some of them so that they aren't too intense. I can do that to these guys. Bring it down a little bit. The idea here is just to set it all up so that in case or whenever your project is needing to have your grass settings and all the base grass that you need, it's going to be here, and you're going to be able to go ahead and just affect the details that are needed. And instead of having to go in and set up every single thing exactly the same way every single time, you have the base set up, ready to go, and all you need to do is just affect, how big you need them to be, how many there needs to be, and where they need to show up. So that's the idea. It's supposed to be pretty easy, simple, and let's go like that. Okay. So far this grass is looking really good. I should be able to soon just be ready to go. And what we can do is we can check if you want it to be, specific to whatever you want. We can go in here. Actually, let's see. Let's go ahead and affect the scale. The scale is going to be great. So we can go ahead and throw in a noise for some of the projects in here. I'm going to use Blistered Turbulence. Let me increase the scale. Let me turn off these guys so we're just looking at this. Now we can go in here, affect the low clip. We can affect the high clip. We can contrast it so we see more variation in between all of these dudes, which is great. And we can do that to all of them so that we have a little bit of variation in scale. And I believe that is incredibly important because, you don't want everything to look the exact same all the time, all the way. And this also will allow you to affect the scale based on noise. So if one area is a little bit tinier, it's perfect. One area is a bit bigger, that's good too. And all of that. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can do this. And I'm a big fan on this. Go in here, probably increase the contrast, bring it back down here so that it only affects the scale in a small way. I'm actually going to do that to this guy. There you go. And then this tall ones, I typically leave these guys to be a low count because you don't want so many to be poking up out of the way. But it's still good. I mean, I can even increase this guy to 90 just to get a little bit in there. Let's go ahead and add some noise. It doesn't have to be too big or too intense. Let me do that. Do that. Increase that just so we have just a tiny little bit of variation in there. Okay, so now we should be able to reveal what our varied grass looks like. Looks pretty cool. There's a definite variation in there, and that's awesome. That's exactly what we want. So essentially what all there is to do left is increase the amount of objects that are scattered in hopes of creating something good and interesting. So the more you make, and let's grab a camera just to test. We're not going to do any kind of render in here. I just want to test the look of these guys. We can pick that spot, go into our thin lens, Break down the f-stop a bit. Compress the highlights. I think it's looking pretty good. That's just a bit too much. Okay, so now you have yourself a grass base that is good to go, and it's easily editable. If you ever buy any more, or you find some more free ones, you can just seriously throw this in here. It should be very self-explanatory. Make sure you set the materials up correctly. Make sure you name them as best as you can. That is incredibly important just to stay organized. There you go. I think this is it. The reason why I wanted to do this project is that it's going to be a foundation for a breakdown that I'm going to do very soon on one of my last renders. So I wanted to go ahead and dedicate a video directly to this, and hopefully we'll be able to just hit the ground running and basically get ready to do the big project, which will be coming out very soon. So thank you guys so much for watching this. I hope you learned something. And if you did, just keep that in mind. Enjoy any other projects that I have made, any other videos that you have made. The idea of all of this is to kind of learn and grow together. So thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoy this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.